Imagine waking up to find your front yard has transformed into a giant pool. No, not the cool kind with floaties, but the whoops, my house is sinking kind. And that pool? It's spreading faster than a toddler with a garden hose. For millions living in coastal areas, this is not a weird dream, it's the sea rising and slowly reclaiming their front lawns. In Papua New Guinea, around 40,000 people have had to abandon their coastal homes over the last decade because their backyards turned into beach resorts, minus the fun. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, fishing villages are battling storms, rising waters, and fish that seem to have packed their bags and swum away. Now that's a sea change no one saw coming. Crops gone with the wind. Climate change is not only pushing people out of their coastal homes, it's wreaking havoc on the very ground they farm. Imagine spending years cultivating crops only to see them shrivel in the sun or drown in a flood. It sounds like a nightmare, but for millions of farmers across the globe, this is their everyday reality. In places like India, the unpredictability of monsoon rains, combined with rising temperatures, has led to massive crop failures. In fact, in 2022, India's wheat production dropped by 5 million metric tons, largely due to extreme heat waves, setting off a chain reaction in global grain markets. Climate-related crop failures have escalated food insecurity, not only in developing countries but also in countries traditionally seen as agricultural powerhouses. A 2020 study in Pakistan showed that their wheat production could drop by up to 15% by 2050 if climate change continues on its current trajectory. The impacts are also being felt in Africa, where recurrent droughts have decimated crops like maize and wheat, further exacerbating hunger and pushing people to migrate in search of better livelihoods. The effects of droughts on agriculture aren't limited to crop failures alone. They destroy entire economies. Smallholder farmers, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, are losing everything to weather disasters. The sad irony here is that these farmers, who contribute to global food production, find themselves unable to feed their own families due to the whims of nature they never caused. The Great Migration. What happens when the land you love and rely on can no longer sustain you? You move. The number of climate migrants has grown exponentially, and it's predicted that by 2050, more than 200 million people will be displaced due to climate change. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the entire population of Brazil. The movement of people from places like Bangladesh and India to cities in Southeast Asia is already happening. The Bay of Bengal, once a thriving fishing region, is now increasingly submerged, leaving families without homes or livelihoods. According to a report from the International Organization for Migration, about 25 million people were displaced by environmental factors in 2023 alone, and many of these displaced individuals have no legal protection. Even entire countries like the Solomon Islands and Tuvalu are facing existential crises due to the relentless rise in sea levels. In some regions, such as the Philippines, migration within the country has become a coping strategy for millions. In the Philippines, typhoons have become stronger and more frequent, driving entire villages inland. This is not just a matter of moving to a safer area, it's the beginning of a life spent in limbo. Relocation can be chaotic, unorganized, and poorly funded, leaving refugees with no clear idea of what their future holds. They find themselves competing for limited resources and basic services, struggling to rebuild their lives after losing everything. This internal migration within countries is expected to increase sharply, and it's clear that current infrastructure and social systems are ill-equipped to handle the increasing number of displaced people. Life in limbo. Being displaced is not just about moving to a new place. It's about losing your identity, your community, and often, your livelihood. The displacement caused by climate change is creating a whole new class of refugees, environmental refugees. These people are not seeking a better life, they're seeking survival. Many end up in overcrowded camps or makeshift settlements, where conditions are often dire. In cities like Dhaka, Bangladesh, the influx of displaced people from coastal areas has created sprawling slums where the basics like clean water and sanitation are luxuries. In parts of sub-Saharan Africa, families that once lived off their farms are now forced to seek refuge in urban slums where they have little to no prospects for employment. Unfortunately, the situation isn't much better in developed countries either. In California, for instance, large numbers of people from climate-impacted areas have fled to urban centers, only to face rising rent prices and a lack of affordable housing. While humanitarian efforts are underway, they often fall short. Refugees often find themselves stuck in limbo, with no clear path to recovery or integration into society. The displacement can result in significant psychological stress, trauma, and even mental health issues that last for generations. Add to that the political and social tensions that often arise when displaced people flood into new areas, and the result is a volatile and unsustainable situation, the legal gray area. Here's where it gets a bit tricky. While millions of people are being displaced by climate change, there's no universally recognized legal framework that gives them protection. Traditional refugee laws, like the 1951 Refugee Convention, don't recognize people displaced by environmental factors as refugees. According to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, the term refugee applies only to those fleeing persecution, not climate-related disasters. This leaves environmental refugees without any legal rights or protections in many countries. As a result, climate refugees often find themselves in a gray area, caught between national immigration laws and international human rights laws. Take the Pacific Islands, for example. Nations like Kiribati and Tuvalu have made headlines for their efforts to secure land in other countries for their citizens, but these attempts have met with limited success. Meanwhile, countries like the US have shown resistance to granting climate migrants asylum, opting instead for temporary status protections, which don't offer long-term solutions. This leaves displaced individuals in legal limbo, with little chance of receiving permanent residence or citizenship in their new host countries. The question of whether displaced people should be allowed to migrate freely across borders because of climate change remains hotly debated. The longer the international community delays creating a comprehensive legal framework, the more difficult it will be to manage the rising number of displaced people. The road ahead. So, what's being done about it? While it might feel like we're heading toward an unstoppable disaster, there's still hope. Countries like Fiji and Vanuatu are stepping up by developing strategies to relocate communities and build resilience against climate change. In Fiji, the government has started working with international organizations to help communities relocate to safer lands away from rising sea levels. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, local communities are fighting back by rebuilding coastal defenses, such as mangrove forests, to protect against storm surges and flooding. Some organizations, like the International Organization for Migration, are also investing in sustainable relocation projects that involve community participation to ensure people don't lose their homes and livelihoods. In countries like the Netherlands, flood protection technologies are being tested, and other nations are looking to adopt these solutions. However, these solutions need to be scaled up. A more substantial global effort is necessary to not only address the needs of displaced populations, but also to prevent the worst outcomes of climate change. If we don't act now, the situation will only worsen. Experts estimate that as many as 200 million people could be displaced by 2050, with many of them facing grave poverty, loss of identity, and a lack of social support. And there you have it, folks. The world is changing, and so are the lives of millions, whether we're ready for it or not. If this video got you thinking, and hopefully laughing too, hit that like button, subscribe for more climate insights, and let's keep the conversation going. Stay tuned for more, and remember, the planet's got a lot to say.